Okay, so first of all, I would like to express my gratitude for all of you who have joined our first webinar towards Youth Forum on Climate Protection 2.0. We plan to have this Youth Forum on Climate Protection in November 2025. The first edition of the Youth Forum on Climate Protection was held in Bangkok in October 2024, and we had collaboration with some of our partners, such as UNEP Regional Office of Asia Pacific, Asian Institute of Technology, and other partners. Our first event focused on several topics, but mainly we are focusing on the engagement of children and youth in the process of Montreal Protocol and Vienna Convention. We also focus on the topics of sustainable cooling. Why sustainable cooling? You will find out in the background of explanation of why we have Vienna Convention, why we have Montreal Protocol. And also, we also successfully gathered sustainable cooling and climate mitigation activists, advocates, and practitioners from around the world. So this process is a global process, although we will have YFCP in one country, but this process is open to global participants, not just, for example, Asia Pacific participants during the 2024 and 2025. It will be probably be held in Nairobi before the Montreal Protocol meeting of parties 37. That's like a summary of why we have this pre-event. So like the pre-event of Youth Forum on Climate Protection will discuss on the things that the youth needs to know about the process that we have, that we will engage is Montreal Protocol meeting of parties 37 in November, and before that we will have the open-ended working group of the parties to the Montreal Protocol, or we call it OEWG 47. And we as Children and Youth Major Group, we are humbled with the support of our partners from UNEP, from the stakeholders, from the private institutions to spearhead the engagement of children and youth in both Montreal Protocol meeting of parties and also Vienna Convention meeting last year, and the future engagements in the topic of ozone and climate protection. I hope that you can all engage and join with our processes. With later, we will share with you the social media and how to join CYMG to receive further information on the process on and for other webinars and preparations towards FCP and also Montreal Protocol. I believe that it will be the end of my opening remarks. So first, I will introduce you to our next session. Our next session is overview of the Montreal Protocol and the Vienna Convention. It will be delivered by Stephanie. Stephanie is the Communications and Information Officer of the Ozone Secretariat. Without further ado, I will give the access and the floor to Stephanie. Please, Stephanie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you for those welcoming remarks. As mentioned, I am Stephanie Egger Haysmith. I am the Communications and Public Information Officer at the Montreal Protocol's Ozone Secretariat. I'm hoping that we have resolved our technical issues and you are able to see my presentation. Are you able to see this?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, let me see if I'm sharing my screen. There we go. Okay, are you able to see this first slide?
Yes. And later, please hide the participants' view because it blocks the slides.
Okay. This one?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
and then you can also make the presentation full screen.
Right. If you can all see the screen and you can hear me, then I will start with a quick introduction and overview of the Vienna Convention and the Montreal Protocol. The Vienna Convention and the Montreal Protocol are sort of ozone treaties. Hold on. I'm not showing the full screen.
No.
Would you give me just a second? One moment.
Your slides here, maybe you'll be able to see me here, please. I don't know, let's see. Oh no, I need to PowerPoint.
Which is about 50 kilometers above the Earth's surface in the stratosphere. Now, it protects humans, animals, plants, and vital ecosystems from harmful ultraviolet radiation. Now, the Vienna Convention. So how did this come about? Well, it was actually as a result of an accident that revolutionized cooling. Invented in 1928, CFCs seemed designed for the modern world. Initially as a safe refrigerant, previously the refrigerants used in cooling were highly toxic and likely to kill you. And later in the 1950s, CFCs were used as propellants in aerosols, so deodorant sprays, hairsprays. They do no damage whatsoever to land, the sea, or the air we breathe. They neither react with other substances in the biosphere nor dissolve to pollute the rain. But, and there's a big but, scientists Sherwood Rowland and Mario Molina warned in 1974 that CFCs have the potential to destroy the ozone. So, according to their hypothesis, we were heading towards an environmental disaster. The high stability of CFCs, the thing making them so very useful on Earth, enables them to attack the ozone layer efficiently, effectively, over and over. Unchanged, CFCs slowly drift up to the stratosphere, where intense solar ultraviolet radiation sever their chemical bonds, releasing chlorine, which strips an atom from the ozone molecule O3, turning it into O2, oxygen. Compounding the problem further, the chlorine accomplishes this destruction without itself undergoing any permanent change. So it can go on to repeat the process again and again. In this way, every CFC molecule destroys thousands of molecules of ozone faster than ozone is produced naturally. The potential increased exposure to the sun's harmful ultraviolet radiation would result in much higher rates of skin cancer and eye cataracts. In plants, the excess UV radiation would affect crop yields. And in animals, affecting fish stocks, for example, would impact food security. And in ecosystems that nurture insects, it would impact insects such as bees that are vital for pollinating plants that produce vegetables and the fruit we eat. Ultimately, any impact also then harms the plants, the very trees that form our carbon sink, that capture the majority of Earth's CO2. Now, how did the world react to this unfolding catastrophe? Even though Rowland's and Molina's hypothesis was questioned and doubted by many, the United Nations Environment Programme nevertheless took action and noted and laid the foundation for action in 1975. In its governing council, it stated that it backed a programme to assess the risks to the ozone layer. And in 1976, the World Plan of Action on the ozone layer, the first international agreement on these issues, was adopted. The plan of action included research into the monitoring of the ozone and solar radiation, the assessment of the effects of ozone depletion in human health, ecosystems, and climate. Adopting the plan of action was a clear sign and acceptance by the delegates that there was a potential problem, although the extent had yet to be determined. But progress was slow. Means of assessing the effects of CFCs on the ozone layer were still in their infancy. As new research came in, estimates on likely depletion fluctuated widely, and these uncertainties were used to cast doubt on Rowland and Molina's hypothesis. But they and other scientists remained resolute. And eventually, in 1985, the Vienna Convention for the protection of the ozone layer was adopted. 20 nations signed it at the time and agreed to take appropriate measures to protect us and the environment against potential ozone loss. While not all countries rushed to ratify it, it did set an important precedent. For the first time, nations agreed, in principle, to tackle a global environmental problem before its effects were felt, or more importantly, perhaps, before it was scientifically proven. To this day, scientific work to protect the ozone layer continues under the Vienna Convention. Supported by the Convention's Trust Fund and ozone research managers, scientists around the world monitor the atmosphere to check on ozone health and levels of UV. This important convention, to further investigate the impact of human activity on the ozone layer, laid the groundwork for much bigger and greater action to follow. The Montreal Protocol. Soon after the adoption of the Vienna Convention, the world was presented with the smoking gun. Data provided in 1985 by the British Antarctic Survey team proved that the world was facing a serious environmental problem and showed that ozone had depleted to such an extent over Antarctica that it had created a hole. This was followed by evidence gathered during the expedition to Antarctica, led by Susan Solomon of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA as it's better known as, that showed levels of chlorine dioxide were significantly higher than predicted, proving that chlorine chemical reactions were destroying the ozone. It ultimately led to the adoption of one of the most successful environmental treaties to date, the Montreal Protocol on Substances that Deplete the Ozone Layer, which was adopted in 1987. Since then, the implementation has avoided billions of tons of CO2 emissions, has helped protect carbon sinks, and delayed ice-free summers in the Arctic. More recently, with its Kigali Amendment, which was adopted in 2016, we can potentially avoid up to 1 degree of warming by the end of the century. So how do the ozone treaties work? Here we're going to run through a quick overview of the organizational charts of the Vienna Convention and the Montreal Protocol, and we'll look at the functions of the Secretariat, the governing bodies and subsidiary bodies, the implementing agencies, and the mechanisms. So here we're going to start with the Vienna Convention. Adopted in 1985 and entered into force in 1988, it became the first convention of any kind to achieve universal endorsement. The objectives of the convention is for parties to adopt legislation or administrative measures against activities that are likely to have an adverse effect on the ozone layer. This is achieved through systematic observations, research, and information exchange. The convention does not require countries to take concrete action to control ozone-depleting substances, or ODSs, but specifically provides a forum for discussion on scientific research and observation of the ozone layer. The parties to the convention meet every 3 years to take decisions on how to administer the convention. The Montreal Protocol, which was ratified in 1987 and which came into force in 1988, has been ratified by 198 parties or 197 countries and the EU. Note the distinction between parties and countries. And since then, the protocol has successfully phased out 99% of ODSs to date. The protocol controls nearly 100 manufactured ozone-depleting substances, most of which are potent greenhouse gases. More recently, the protocol's Kigali Amendment added 18 hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs, to the list of controlled substances. While HFCs do not destroy ozone, they are powerful greenhouse gases. And the amendment was adopted in 2016 and came into force in 2019. The parties to the protocol meet annually to take decisions aimed at ensuring the implementation of this legal agreement continues and is effective. The MOP meets with the COP back to back every 3 years. The treaties have their respective bureaus, which are composed of a president, 3 vice presidents, and a rapporteur that meet between the MOP and the COP. Research is key to effectively monitoring process. The Ozone Research Managers was established at the first meeting of the Vienna Convention. This scientific forum comprises atmospheric research scientists and scientists who specialize, sorry, I hope you can hear over the background noise, who specialize in research related to ozone modification. They meet every 3 years prior to the COPs, where they present their recommendation for the COPs adoption and consideration and adoption. The open-ended working group was established in 1989, but I won't go into detail here because Pablo, my colleague, is going to talk about the OEG in more detail. And finally, supporting the treaties and the various bodies is the Montreal Protocol's Ozone Secretariat. We organize the conferences and meetings, we manage the implementation of the decisions resulting from the convention protocol meetings, collect and provide data, information on the production and consumption of ODSs, and provide governments, organizations, and individuals with information on the ozone layer. Here, you can see emanating from the Montreal Protocol the mechanisms in purple that were established to support the implementation of decisions. So the multilateral fund, essentially the Montreal Protocol's bank financing mechanism, was established in 1990 to provide financial assistance for Article 5 developing countries with their obligations under the protocol. The fund is managed by the Executive Committee with the assistance of the Fund Secretariat and the Treasurer. The Implementation Committee is responsible for receiving, considering, and reporting on any possible non-compliances by any of the parties. Last but not least, we have the assessment panels. Science underpins everything done under the ozone treaties. The 3 assessment panels inform and provide updates so that the parties can reach informed decisions. Every 4 years, the key findings of all 3 panels is consolidated into a synthesis report. Implementing agencies that support the multilateral fund are international organizations that implement MLF-funded projects in partnership with the governments of A5 parties. These comprise the United Nations Development Programme, or UNDP, the United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP, and that specific agency is called Ozone Actions, Ozone Action, and the United Industrial Development Organization, or UNIDO, as well as the World Bank. Last but not least, at the more grassroots level, we have national ozone offices that are located in 147 developing countries that help support their respective governments to implement their obligations under the Montreal Protocol. Each region of ozone officers comes together and meets annually to discuss and share information and updates on technologies, issues, and experiences. And hopefully with that, I haven't gone over time despite our technical hitches at the beginning, and will now hand over to Pablo.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie, for your presentation. So the second part of the session, we will hear the preparatory process before the Montreal Protocol, the open-ended working group. We have in this room Pablo Moscoso, Senior Legal Officer of the Ozone Secretariat. So Stephanie have revealed to us a little bit on what is open-ended working group. And in the process of Montreal Protocol, we also have open-ended working group, which the details will be explained by Pablo. I will give the floor to Pablo, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your introduction and for this invitation. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to all of you, depending on where you are in the world. I'm here with Stephanie in Nairobi, in Kenya, in the seat of the Ozone Secretariat. And I will now share my screen. Please let me know if you can see it. Just a second. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes, not yet full screen, but yeah, we can see.
Yes. Okay. So thank you again, and I will talk about the preparatory process for the meeting of the parties, which is the open-ended working group. As Stephanie mentioned, the meeting of the parties meets every year, and this usually takes place in October or November. And then in order to prepare the work for the meeting of the parties, to discuss draft decisions and hear the assessment panels, the open-ended working group usually meets in July of every year. And as Stephanie mentioned, the Montreal Protocol is a protocol in the context of the Vienna Convention. So the Vienna Convention is a framework agreement to protect the ozone layer. And it states that parties can agree and adopt specific protocols. And so within the framework of the Vienna Convention, the Montreal Protocol was adopted. As Stephanie mentioned, this was in 1987, and then it entered into force in 1989. Because the open-ended working group prepares the work of the meeting of the parties, I have to talk first. Excuse me, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Then I'll continue. And so I was saying that because the open-ended working group prepares the meeting, the work that then will be taken over by meetings of the parties, then I have to say a few things about the meetings of the parties. So as you can see in the screen, the meeting of the parties has a number of functions in the Montreal Protocol in Article 11. So these functions, as you will see, are very broad. So the meeting of the parties have many powers. It can review the implementation of the protocol. It can decide on issues such as adjustments to some articles of the protocol. It can also consider proposals for amendments to the protocol, and which is what happened, for example, when the Kigali Amendment was adopted by in 2016. It was discussed before adoption or in at the meeting of the parties. It can assess control measures under the protocol, and it also approves the budget for implementing the protocol, which is essential for the work under the protocol. And also it can take and undertake any additional action that may be required for the achievement of the purposes of the protocol. So these, as I have said before, these functions are very broad. And when the meeting of the parties makes a decision, it adopts a document called a decision. So usually every MOP adopts a number of decisions on various issues discussed at the MOP and before the MOP, usually discussed during the open-ended working group. And as Stephanie mentioned, the last meeting of the parties took place last year in Bangkok, and it was a joint meeting of the parties to the Montreal Protocol, which is every year, and also it was joined with the conference of the parties to the Vienna Convention. The Vienna Convention and the Montreal Protocol are two multilateral environmental agreements that have universal acceptance. That means that all members of the United Nations and even more parties have ratified both multilateral agreements. So the UN has 193 members, as you know. All of them are parties to the Vienna Convention and the Montreal Protocol, plus other 5. So there are 198 parties to the Vienna Convention and to the Montreal Protocol. This is very important because the entire community of states and also the European Union separate parties to the Montreal Protocol are all member states of the European Union plus the European Union as well. So all UN member states plus the Holy See, the State of Palestine, Niue and Cook Islands, and then the European Union. That makes up the 198 parties. And last year, we had the last joint meeting of the COP and MOP. And as I said before, the COP and MOP adopt a number of decisions. And so if you go into our webpage, the webpage of the Ozone Secretariat, as you can see on the screen, you can find under the heading of meetings, you can find the reports from all past meetings and also decisions adopted during those past meetings. So just to have an idea of the work that will be carried out this year, as I'll mention in a few minutes, we have a provisional agenda for the open-ended working group meeting taking place this year. And many of the issues or the items in the provisional agenda come from decisions taken during the last MOP. So if you go into the document with decisions, which you have now on the screen, you can see, well, first there's a report with all the details of the negotiations and discussions during the meeting. And then there's a document with the decisions, which includes 23 decisions adopted by the last MOP on various issues, on multiple issues, as you can see on the screen. Many of these decisions, for example, ask the Ozone Secretariat to prepare some documents that are going to be discussed this year, first at the open-ended working group. And also some of these decisions refer to work that is entrusted to the assessment panels. As Stephanie mentioned, these are comprised, for example, by experts and scientists. And these decisions are relevant to the work of the next meeting of the open-ended working group. When I go into the provisional agenda for the next meeting, I'll mention a few of these decisions. Just you have a sample of them in the screen of the titles of those decisions. And so the open-ended working group, as Stephanie mentioned, you see the OEWG is not mentioned in the Montreal Protocol. It was created by the MOP. So the MOP, the meeting of the parties, is an organ that is, you can find it in the Montreal Protocol, and it has, as I mentioned before, a number of functions that includes taking all actions relevant for the implementation of the protocol. So using that power, the meeting of the parties in its first meeting in 1989 in Helsinki in Finland created the open-ended working group. So it was created by the MOP. That is why it reports to the MOP, and it is a subsidiary body of the MOP. So it reports, it carries out the work entrusted to the OEWG by the MOP. So, as I mentioned before, the OEWG prepares the meetings of the parties and supports those meetings, for example, by reviewing the reports from the assessment panels, and also by discussing and preparing draft decisions that then are sent to the MOP later in the year for further discussion if needed, or for just adoption, or discussion and adoption. So the open-ended working group meets at least once every year. The practice over the last few years has been one meeting every year, as I said before, usually in the middle of the year, around July. In the early years, there were more than one meeting every year, but now it has, the practice is one meeting a year. And the meetings are arranged and prepared by the Ozone Secretariat. And so essential to the work of the MOP and also the OEWG, as mentioned before, and also emphasized by Stephanie, are the assessment panels. They support parties with scientific, technological, and financial information so that all decisions can be taken by the meeting of the parties based on actual scientific or technical data. So it's important. It's very essential. That's why, for example, in the next meeting of the open-ended working group, an important agenda item, as is usually the case, is a presentation by the assessment panels. And these assessment panels were also created by the meeting of the parties. And so they are also subsidiary bodies that report to the meeting of the parties. And there are three panels: the Scientific Assessment Panel, or SAP, the Technology and Economic Assessment Panel, or TEEP, and the Environmental Effects Assessment Panel. And these panels have many members from the entire, all members or parties to the protocol, which are 198 countries, and also the European Union, nominated by parties and elected by parties. So they prepare usually, they have reports to present every year, updates on the reports. And then, as Stephanie mentioned, also every 4 years, they present a synthesis report. The last synthesis report was in 2022. So the next one will be in 2026. And then the open-ended working group is chaired by 2 persons every year, which are the co-chairs. So the co-chairs have to represent all parties, and especially in the context of the Montreal Protocol, we have a group of parties which are developing countries. Most of the parties are developing countries, called usually Article 5 parties, because Article 5 of the Montreal Protocol refers to the special situation of developing countries. So this is around 140 something parties, close to 150 parties, which are developing countries or Article 5 parties. And those developed countries are called non-Article 5 parties. So the open-ended working group has 2 co-chairs, one representing Article 5 parties or developing countries, and one representing developed countries or non-Article 5 parties. And these are elected in the MOP the year before. So for 2025, the 2 co-chairs of the open-ended working group are Chantel Wellington from Barbados, who is representing Article 5 parties, and Annie Gabriel from Australia, representing non-Article 5 parties. They were elected last year in Bangkok to serve as co-chairs during the entire year. And then the year before, as you can see in the slide, the co-chairs were Miruza Mohammed from Maldives and Ralph Birkstorm from the Netherlands, also representing Article 5 and non-Article 5 parties. And every year, the OEWG meets based on a provisional agenda, which is prepared by the Ozone Secretariat in agreement with the co-chairs. So this provisional agenda usually includes any item that the MOB has requested the open-ended working group to discuss. So for example, last year, one of the decisions taken by the MOB was decision 36-9 on further strengthening Montreal Protocol institutions. And this decision asked the Ozone Secretariat to prepare some technical documents. One, for example, is on illegal trade. Another one is on common features of licensing systems from parties. And this decision says that those reports are to be presented to the open-ended working group. So that's an example of how one issue is included in the agenda. Another may be any item requested by parties to be included in the provisional agenda. So parties can send communications to the Secretariat requesting that the next meeting of the OEWG include in its agenda a certain item. So this is included in the provisional agenda. And it's called provisional agenda because it's provisional until it's approved during the OEWG itself. At the beginning of the OEWG, the provisional agenda is discussed between parties, and if parties wish to present other urgent items or make some changes, that has to be discussed, and then the agenda is approved and adopted at the beginning of the meeting. So you can find in our webpage, as you see on the screen, if you go to the meetings tab, you can go to 47 OEWG, as you can see, and then there you will find the provisional agenda under pre-session documents, as I'm showing in the screen. And it's now also available in all UN official languages. So the documents that we prepare are first usually prepared in English and then translated into all official UN languages. And the provisional agenda for OEWG 47, which will take place in Bangkok in July of this year, is in the screen. It has 11 items. So at first, of course, the opening of the meeting, then organizational matters, including the adoption of the agenda, as I mentioned before. And then there are certain issues. For example, item 4 refers to a presentation by the Technology and Economic Assessment Panel. So this is one of the assessment panels, the TIP, that will present its progress report for 2025, including issues on life cycle refrigerant management, based on decision 36-2 adopted last year, and also other issues that you can see in the screen that the TIP will present. And then other issues are also included in the provisional agenda, and you can find in the web page not only the agenda, the provisional agenda, but also you'll find documents explaining every issue in the provisional agenda, every item. I'll go back one slide. As you can see now, below the provisional agenda in our webpage, you have document number 2 for this meeting, called Issues for Discussion by and Information for the Attention of the Open-Ended Working Group. So in this note, there are explanations of different agenda items. And then there's also an addendum, which means additional information for consideration by parties is included in the next document, Add 1, that you can see in the screen. So if you are interested in a specific technical issues or agenda items that will be discussed during OEWG this year, you can go into our webpage and you will find technical information precisely prepared, specific to each agenda item, and then already shared with all parties. So they have this basic information for the meeting. And then how is work organized? Usually the open-ended working group meets, in principle, meets in plenaries, which means all parties. And maybe I didn't mention it before because it's usually something obvious, but it's important to emphasize. It's called open-ended because all parties are welcome to participate, all 198 parties. It's not like a committee with only a number of parties, but it's all parties. And the plenaries usually are chaired by the co-chairs. That's their role, their main role. And they take place, for example, at the beginning to adopt the agenda, to hear presentations by the assessment panels. And then each agenda item is presented during plenaries to parties. And depending on requests from parties, after an agenda item is discussed or presented during the plenary can create contact groups or informal groups, which I'll mention. I'll go a little bit more into detail in a minute. And then those contact groups may meet separately in smaller rooms, and then they will report their progress to the plenary again. And also the plenary will meet to close agenda items and to adopt the report and to forward decisions to the next meeting of the parties. So that's one way OEWG organizes its work. And I said before that there are also contact and informal groups. So when an issue is presented during the plenary, any party can request, for example, that can introduce a draft decision on that issue. And this is usually done through a conference room paper or CRP. They're called CRPs, conference room papers. So let's say agenda item 7 may be under discussion in the plenary, and any party may say, I propose that we adopt a decision on this issue, or that we consider a draft decision. I have a proposal, which is the conference room paper. And then the co-chairs can decide to create a contact group to discuss this specific proposal. And the contact group will be chaired by 2 co-facilitators, usually representing non-Article 5 parties and Article 5 parties. So that's why there are many, usually during OEWG and during the MOP, you will see in the schedule, and I'll mention later how you can find it, you'll see different meetings of contact groups or informal groups as necessary in different rooms, which is how work is usually done in a more specific level. So meetings of contact and informal groups are open to any party that may wish to participate. So it can be 20 parties, 50 parties, 100 parties, depending on the topic, on the time of the day, or the schedule for that day, and a number of issues. They may be open to observers depending on parties. Parties may decide when they start a discussion in a contact group, they may decide to open access to observers, or they may decide to conduct a discussion only between parties. So that's up to parties to decide. That's the practice that we have in the Ozone meetings organized by the Ozone Secretariat. And then also the OEWG may create informal groups. Informal groups are created usually when there is no specific CRP or draft proposal. Maybe an issue comes up during the plenary that parties are interested, maybe something that they hear for the first time, or an issue that they are reminded about during discussions, and they can request further discussions, and then the co-chairs can create an informal group, asking always all parties if they agree on the creation of the informal group, and then the informal group would meet separately to discuss the issue and then report to the plenary. And as you can see in the screen shows a meeting of a contact group. And as you can see, the text of draft decisions are projected in these contact groups, and they are edited there. Parties are participating, and they are proposing the text, and the secretary is taking note, and it's editing there live in front of parties. So that's how the work is usually done at a technical level. And then we have an app that you can download for free. You can find it as OEWG 47. Before every new meeting, the app is updated, and for now you can find it at OEWG 47. After OEWG 47 and before MOP, the meeting of the parties at the end of the year, MOP 37, the app will be updated, and you can find it as MOP 37. And there you will find specific information that is uploaded live during the meeting, with the schedule, with information on meeting rooms, documents, including CRPs, and then you can see the streaming, which is also available, of the plenaries, which is available also on YouTube, on the channel of the Ozone Secretariat. And you'll find, if you go to previous meetings of the OEWG, you can find all conference room papers and proposals discussed. And during OEWG, you will find them, and you'll find the latest updated version of those documents. So during the meeting, you can also, access the documents through our website. So if for one reason or another you cannot access the app, or you prefer using your laptop or computer, you can also get access to the CRPs through our website. So I hope I haven't gone over time, and that's what I wanted to mention in general. And thank you again for this opportunity. And now, if there are any questions that you may have, any issues that I can help with, at your disposal. So thank you.
So, thank you, Pablo, for your comprehensive explanation on the process of OEWG, especially in the road to OEWG 47. As we know, colleagues, that OEWG 47 will be held from July 7th until 11th in Bangkok, Thailand. So we will share like how you can participate in this process. For now, we will enter a short question and answer or dialogue. I will also share my screen again. So in our short question and answer, I see some of the colleagues have posted their question to the chat box. I will facilitate to answer to give it to the speakers. So the theme of the open discussion is like how can young people meaningfully engage in these processes. But like I will give just the question. Okay, I see some of the question and I will select some of the question. I think I will go first to the first question from Richard. So uh, Richard asked about do the secretariats of the multilateral environmental agreements under the umbrella of persistent organic pollutants coordinate their work? Before I give it to either Stephanie or Pablo, maybe I need to say a little bit that I think Ozone Secretariat does not handle MEA of persistent organic pollutants, because if I remember correctly, persistent organic pollutants will be discussed under the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Convention, or BRS Convention, that just finished their COPs from the late April to the early May. Maybe if Stephanie and Pablo can also confirm this.
I think Pablo's probably better placed to answer this one.
Indeed. Yeah, well, thank you for the question. So the Ozone Secretariat is only in charge of organizing meetings and receiving information for parties, and working and administering the ozone treaties. So the ozone treaties are the Vienna Convention and the Montreal Protocol. And the protocol has also 5 amendments. So that's our work. We are part of UNEP, the UN Environment Program in Nairobi, but UNEP also has other secretariats that organize the work of other environmental agreements or other multilateral environmental agreements. So for pollutants, there is another secretariat, and there are several that you can find online, but it's not the work of the Ozone Secretariat. So we are the secretariat of one multilateral environmental agreement, or the ozone treaties, in fact, the Vienna Convention and Montreal Protocol, and other multilateral agreements have also their secretariats. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Pablo. So I will also see, while I'll screen the question, I think I will give to our first asker direct live, Sasa Emmanuel James. Yeah, please, if you have a question to our speakers. Please unmute yourself. Okay, I think Sasa Emmanuel James. Okay, yeah, can you? Yeah, please.
Yes, no. Yes, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Yeah, my name is Sasa. My question is just simple, so that this group is for youth and children major group. But you can see our attendance is very low in this forum. My question is that this conferences or training is coming to for you in Nairobi or Bamako. Is it the opportunity for younger people like within the region to come and attend such an event so that we can have a knowledge, we can have an opportunity to interact with the experts or UN agencies. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think I will. Thank you for your question. I think I will combine this question with the question on how can you contribute to the meetings or discussions. Although I think Pablo or Stephanie has mentioned in their presentation, but I will give maybe this chance to Stephanie first and then to Pablo if Pablo wants to add something.
Thank you, Sasa, for that question. And it's a question that comes up repeatedly because I know youth are particularly, interested in engaging in these conferences where very important issues that particularly pertain to you and are important to youth, like environmental issues. And the question is, how can you attend? Now, unfortunately, we do not have budget to finance the attendance for observers. Observers are welcome to attend, but that has to be self-financed. That said, we do live stream the plenary discussions. So you can access and watch and listen to the discussions and the debates going on the floor during plenary. That is limited to discussions during plenary only, and that doesn't mean then you're not able to follow what is being discussed in the informal and in the contact groups, as Pablo mentioned. These are then side meetings, and these are not live streamed. But to get a sense of what is going on, I would encourage you to go onto the meeting page that Pablo showed you earlier. And if you go to OEWG 47, for example, you will then, when you go to the daily sessions, and you will see the timings for the plenary session, which is from morning to lunchtime, and then in the afternoon until generally 6 p.m., you will see a link. So I encourage you to go and click on the link and follow the discussions that way. And that's a good start. I don't know if Pablo, if you want to add anything else to that.
Yes, just to highlight something that Stephanie mentioned, the possibility of observers participating. So I understand that last year, the children and youth major group was an observer in our COPMOP, right? So observers have to be entities that they can be an entity made up of young persons, but they have to be, they have to do some work or related to the protection of the ozone layer. So any entity, including young people, can submit a request to participate as an observer, and we will request information to confirm that the entity is related to the protection of the ozone layer. And even, if I'm not mistaken, last year there was, during the COPMOP, there was a declaration made by this young people group at the end of the meeting, presented during last year. So that's a way to be able even to speak before the plenary. And also, as Stephanie mentioned, each party, especially Article 5 parties, have national ozone officers. So each party has an office in charge of implementing the Montreal Protocol. And there may be ways for young people to either contribute to that work, to participate, or to in some way engage with those national ozone offices. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie and Pablo, for the answer. I think it also addressed the recent comment by Kwabe Victor on we address these technicalities to ensure interested youth are incorporated in the discussions. Don't worry, and there is also another comment from Stella that Montreal Protocol work is quite technical and therefore participation is limited. I mean, to be honest, I'm not from an ozone background. I'm not a sustainable cooling, like my major is not related at all with sustainable cooling or ozone layer, although I'm a biology student. I can still claim some of it to my credit, but we as CYMG, we are trying our best to make youth to first know what are these process, two, what are the avenues of engagement, and third, whether you are a generalist or specialist in this topic, how can you participate. So that's like the goal of this session and the session further. And then like I will go to the next question. I know our time is limited. I think the question of this desktop app or mobile app has been answered by me and my colleagues. And then I think I will go to the question. I think there is a question from I forgive me if the pronunciation is wrong. Hayagrifan Balaji S. So the first question is, what would be the possibility in OEWG 47 or MOP 37 on relaxing the global intellectual properties or technology transfer to Article 5 countries on reducing CTC emissions alternative to VSLS, recovery, recycling, reclamation, and destruction of regreffrance. And then the second question is, what is the degree of the priority given when precautionary principle is invoked? Yeah, I don't know who are from you who are able to answer this first. So like I will just give the floor for you. You can speak anytime.
Yes,
I'm going to hand it over to Pablo. Can you see in the chat? You may want to read through the question again if you can't read it, if you didn't catch that.
You know, there are many questions in the chat. So at this moment, it's a bit difficult to see there. But I mentioned, you know, the topics that are going to be discussed during OEWG 47 are in the provisional agenda, right? That's what is planned to be discussed. And as I showed earlier, the provisional agenda includes one in agenda item 4A, life cycle refrigerant management, right? Life cycle refrigerant management. So under this issue, reclamation may be discussed. You know, it would be under this context, but this will be based on the report from the Technology and Economic Assessment Panel. So we will have to hear, I mean, parties will have to hear the report of the panel, and it would depend on what the report includes. There may be, based on this presentation by the panel, interest from parties to discuss a specific issue on recycling or reclaiming, for example. But it will depend on what is presented and what parties also propose during the discussion. And then there was the second part of the question was on the precautionary principle, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
Right. So this is an essential principle in international environmental law. And Stephanie mentioned in her presentation how action was taken to protect the ozone layer even before the science was, you know, we had scientific confirmed data. Even before that, there was already work done to protect the ozone layer. So this precautionary principle is important and is always taken into consideration. As always, these discussions start on presentations by scientists. So scientists during the presentation, during the assessment panel presentations, they may flag that they are finding something problematic or something potentially problematic that may have a negative effect on the atmosphere and particularly on in the ozone layer, and this could lead as a precautionary measure to further discussions and actions to be taken. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So maybe Haya Griffin, if you want to give like a response to that answer, yeah, please.
Thank you, Stephen. Hi, Pablo. Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for your input. I was curious to know more about one specific aspect on the precautionary principle. I mean, like whenever parties invoke this principle, there is a stiff opposition from other parties on various aspects, and at times, the point on which the precautionary principle was evoked doesn't get taken forward. In this case, in the last meeting, I did come across on the session note wherein European Union did propose the draft session and invoke this precautionary approach on VSLS, but there are many parties who also cited economic and other reasons on having either a more scientific evidence or to come up with more inputs rather than reducing the VSLS emission. So I was curious to know on what would be the degree of priority given, and is there any possibility for this precautionary approach given a future or a greater priority in these cases? Like how scenarios are handled over it?
You are
Sorry,
still
I
muted,
was
Pablo.
muted. Yes. Thank you for the very interesting question or follow-up question. And you see, even the Montreal Protocol, its preamble mentions specifically that noting, parties to the protocol note that precautionary measures for controlling emissions of certain chlorofluorocarbons that have already been taken at national and regional levels. So, they acknowledge that already by the time the Montreal Protocol was adopted, there had been precautionary measures taken at that time. And so in any negotiation in environmental issues, this is an issue that will come up, but of course, it's for parties to decide. The Secretariat doesn't adopt the decisions. We organize a meeting, these meetings, but it's up to parties to decide how much they will invoke this principle or how much they will consider other issues in the discussion. So we prepare the meeting. We assist parties in meeting to reach these decisions, but always how far they go into a specific topic or how much they consider in an issue the precautionary principle is up to parties always. So we have to work as completely neutral in that, right? But it is present always, as you mentioned before. And so it is important to know about this principle. And I'm sure it will continue to have a role in discussions under the Montreal Protocol. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pablo, for the inputs. I was wondering if there could be any veto kind of a power for a precautionary principle, but I do understand the scenarios. Thank you so much. Thanks for your explanation.
Okay, thank you. I have another question that maybe I will give it to Stephanie later to address in the chat because of the limited time. So maybe Stephanie, you can look through this question from Masha Samkova about does OEWG have an enforcement mechanism via Vienna Convention or Montreal Protocol apart from the implementation? I think you can help to answer this question. It will be good. Thank you. But I think for the last question for the limited time, I will give it to Zoo. I think this is Zoo here. So please ask your question.
Hi, Stephen. Thank you. Thanks for the floor. So I had a comment actually. I had a question on the amendment process. As you know, the Montreal Protocol actually have gone through several amendments, and I mean many of the amendments, even the last amendments when that was adopted, we were kind of kids maybe. So yeah, a lot of information we don't have. So I was interested to know about how amendments are done. Is it like because different treaty has different, different convention, different protocol has different procedures. So how an amendment is introduced and negotiated, because currently we're seeing the negotiation in the Plastics Treaty INC, which is maybe a very different from the Montreal Protocol one. So that's the question, because I see there's a bit of interest on nitrous oxide perhaps being covered to an amendment, because there's also a lot of discussions happening in the UNEP working group on the nitrogen, and there is no specific and there's a bit of discussion among the member states that perhaps Montreal Protocol can cover that. Yeah, so the procedure, how an amendment is negotiated and then adopted. Yeah.
Okay, maybe
Yes, thank
Pablo
you.
or Stephanie. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Yeah, indeed, maybe for other participants in case they are not familiar with amendments, amendments are modifications to the text of the protocol, in this case, of a treaty. And so the Montreal Protocol was adopted in 1987, entered into force in 1989. But as time went on, of course, new scientific discoveries were made. And for the Kigali Amendment, Stephanie mentioned first, there were ozone depleting substances that were phased out, and then they were replaced by other substances. And then it was discovered scientifically that these new, these substances that had replaced previous substances didn't affect the ozone layer as much, but they had high levels of global warming. So they were increasing global warming. And this led to the adoption of the Kigali Amendment in 2016, which was the last amendment to the protocol. Now, to see the process for amending, you can go to, in fact, it's not in the Montreal Protocol, but it's in the Vienna Convention, in Article 9 of the Vienna Convention, which refers to the procedure to amend either the convention or any of its protocols, in this case, only the Montreal Protocol. So any party may propose amendments, right? So it's up to parties first to propose the initial amendment, and they have to take into account relevant scientific and technical consideration. That's something important always in our treaties. And then the amendment can be adopted in a meeting of the parties. So the Kigali Amendment was adopted in a meeting of the parties that took place in Kigali. The Copenhagen Amendment was adopted in a meeting of the parties in Copenhagen. But they require a high level of votes in favor to be able to adopt the amendment. So the protocol mentions that they have to be discussed during, the Vienna Convention mentions they have to be discussed by parties, and they have to be adopted. It says they will make every effort first to reach an agreement by consensus. So consensus means in this context that no party opposes. So if no one opposes, then the amendment can be considered as adopted. But if consensus is not possible and no agreement is reached on how to proceed, then it has to be approved, the amendment, by 3/4 of all parties present during that meeting and voting. So it's a high requirement. Either no one opposes, or meaning that everyone has to be happy with the text and consider that they can agree with the text, or if that is impossible, then a high number of parties have to vote in favor. But that's not the end of it, because the amendment also, to enter into force, requires a number of ratifications. So the amendment will mention how many ratifications it requires to enter into force, and that could take sometimes a few years. So, for example, the Kigali Amendment was adopted in 2016, but entered into force in 2019. So that's the procedure in general. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for your comprehensive answer, Pablo. I will see in the chat. Yeah, I think we have reached the end of our session. But before that, and before we go to the closing remarks, I think it's a better time for us to have a group photo together. I will remove spotlight to all of us so we can have yeah, we can have the view. So like everyone, please open your camera, colleagues, distinguished guests, speakers. So if you are able to open your camera, please open your camera. And I will take the picture. I will wait 1 minute. It's okay, Joanna. For those who are able, yeah, I will take a group photo. I will wait for 1 more minute. Okay, I will take the first page. You don't know where you are, so keep smiling. 1, 2, 3. Wait. Okay. One more take first for first page. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then the second page. Okay, second page. Please keep your smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we got the photo of everyone. So we have not yet reached the end because we will have closing remarks. So let me share my screen again. So the closing remarks will be delivered by Clarence Hugh Almoite, my colleague as also Ozone and Climate Protection Co-Thematic Facilitator, who will explain the closing remarks and also participation in OEWG 47, Youth Forum on Climate Protection, and future events. Please, Clarence.
Yes. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So again, thank you, Stephanie and Pablo, for the great insights that you have shared, and we are glad that we are engaging once again and collaborating, and hopefully we can bring this before the open-ended working group, and hopefully during the 37th meeting of parties in Nairobi, as we prepare for the Youth Forum, the second leg or the second Youth Forum on Climate Protection, or YFCP 2.0. So as we bring this webinar, so I'd like to thank first of all each of you for being part of this important conversation. So this is just the start, one that connects us not only to the global environmental governance, but also to the future we are going to secure. So we were privileged to hear Stephanie, who gave us a comprehensive overview of Montreal Protocol and Vienna Convention, which to this day stands as the most successful and, may I say, systematic MEA in history, which as a shining example of what the world can achieve when science, policy, and international cooperation are aligned. So through this framework, nearly every country came together to phase out ODS, ozone depleting substances. Then following that, Pablo deepened the understanding, the preparatory process behind this protocol, particularly the OEWG, while behind the scenes, these processes are the foundations where global actions are laid, and they reflect also the importance of evidence-based discussion, negotiation, and also the global consensus. So youth engagement in this manner is should be strategic, because as young people, we bring the urgency, innovation, and a powerful moral voice. So understanding these mechanisms equips us to engage meaningfully, whether through advocacy, policy research, or direct participation in international platforms. Even though this is the most successful, yet there are more works to do, and there are more contributions to work on. Our journey toward the second YFCP is about more than just learning. So it is about activating this generation that sees climate protection is not a distant issue, but a personal mission. It is about ensuring that young people are not just heard, but also to be involved, empowered, and respected in the global decision-making process. I strongly believe and personally believe that maybe 20 years from now, 10 years from now, or 50 years from now, some of our colleagues here or other young people now, they could be sitting at the table of the Montreal Protocol, maybe at the 100th MOP. Yeah, that's the reality. No? Like, let's take today's insights like a launch pad. So let's amplify our voices, strengthen the networks, and continue to build a youth movement that understand that the systems that we are part of. And lastly, I would like to invite all of you, the young people here who would like to engage for the upcoming open-ended working group. And please contact me, and we are trying our best for us to meaningfully and scientifically engage young people in this process, together with the partners that we have involved during the last YFCP. So we will be staying with them until the OEWG and this year's MOP. So thank you again for all being here. So the work continues. And personally, I would like to thank Stephen, our colleagues from the Ozone and Climate Protection Working Group, Stephanie and Pablo, and to the overall Ozone Secretariat for your technical support, because this is very important and should be, and the science should be communicated not only to non-science, but also to everyone, broadly to everyone, especially to the future generation. And yeah, I think that's my remark. And we are looking forward to working together with the Ozone Secretariat and the partners.
Okay, thank you for your closing remark, Clarence. So I think that's like a good note to close our presentation. I know several of the colleagues and also distinguished guests have asked for the context of the both secretariat and contact for us. So for CYMG, we both Clarence and I are the current co-facilitator for the Ozone and Climate Protection. Can email us to collaborate to ask further. But for the CYMG as a whole, we will share the contact details in this slide. I will present this slide. Yeah. So this is our contact. We have a website, and in website you can also join CYMG UNEP. You can also follow our Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Hopefully, this recording is enough to be uploaded to YouTube, so you can watch it later. And I would like to ask Pablo and Stephanie if you are consent to share your presentation to the registrants of this webinar. Are you consent? Or do I need to do something behind?
No, that's fine too. You mean basically the recording which shows the presentations? Share that.
Yeah. And also like
That's
the presentation file, like the slides from your first
Oh,
session
you
and
actually
Pablo's,
want to? Okay, I can share those with you. Yes, that's fine.
and also from Pablo.
Mhm.
Okay.
we can share. Of
Okay,
course.
thank you. Later we will connect through email. Maybe Claire or I. So thank you for your consent, and so thank you everyone. Maybe also Stephanie later and Pablo, you can type the email of Ozone Secretariat if the colleagues here want to collaborate on certain occasions. You are welcome to share your the details probably of the Ozone Secretariat. So this is the closing of our event, colleagues. Thank you. Thank you for the collaboration. Thank you for the energy and also your attention to 1.5 hour of event. We will share the next steps of Youth Forum on Climate Protection 2.0, other webinars, and also if you are interested to join OEWG 47 in person, unfortunately there will be no funding, so you need to self-fund yourself to attend in Bangkok from July 7th until 11th. CYMG can facilitate you to register through us. I have shared the email of Clarence and me, so you can email to us to indicate your interest because it needs registration. But we will make sure that everyone who can self-fund themselves can participate in this process. So that will be the end of our webinar. So I will